Hey, everybody in YouTube land, this is No Level Cop Podcast, and today we're going to talk about winter anime from 2025.
Yo, welcome back to the No Level Cap Podcast, because I could have swore Rakeem said No Level Cops, and I'm like, man, we so old. Ain't no cops over here, buddy.
Hey, that's Cap. That's No Level Cap.
Yes, sir. I am your host, Sage Ashford. These are my co-hosts, Rakeem Beck, Devin Butts, Terance Flowers, Will Coleman. Y'all know the drill. We cover all the anime, all the nerd culture, none of the bullshit. This week, not too long ago, actually, we did a deep dive on Sakamoto Days. It's like the biggest new anime of the winter 2025 season. This time around, though, we wanted to cover a lot more, so I put my master anime viewers on the case to dive into a bunch of different anime so we could give you a thorough look at everything. And Devin has to go very shortly. He got stuff he got to do. You know, we all busy. We all busy men. So I'm gonna just go ahead and let Devin dive into his anime. And Devin, what was the anime and what did you think of it?
So I know me and you had talked that I told you about when I was watching. I thought about it. I'm like, I think I'm gonna pick something newer. And this is actually one that when we looked at the list, I was interested in. And it's Tasokare Hotel. Pretty interesting one so far. Of course, I watched the first 3 episodes. So it's an interesting anime about like death and like this weird place of like being in between life and death. The show starts out like this girl's on the road. She's like, I can't move, I feel weird. And then they pan down to like her side. She's like, I think she's been stabbed or something. And they're showing like her basically dying and her, going to this next realm. It's really interesting because when I saw this, it reminded me of the hotel from Final Fantasy VII's really weird tangent, but the Golden Saucer had this like spooky hotel that you could go to, and it has like almost like a haunted hotel. And when we saw this, when we previewed this, that's what it reminded me of. So like, I'm gonna check this out. It looked like there was some kind of crazy stuff going on in the trailer at a certain point. I haven't quite gotten there just yet, but pretty much Nico, she's the protagonist. She dies. She goes to this place. The hotel, when you arrive there, it's weird because you have your head is like you don't look like yourself. You have a weirdly shaped head. So when she got there, her head was actually normal, but she didn't have eyes. And so the whole gimmick is when you get to this place, you don't have your head yet until you start remembering your name. So you lose some of your memories. You kind of have like a cloudy version of what's going on or what happened. You're like, where am I? Why did I get here? So once you go into your hotel room that you're assigned to, it's specifically for that person. So this hotel room has like remnants of their memory, specifically kind of things that happened like right before they died or like that were related to their death. So when you find your name, that's when your head goes back to normal. So there's one person comes in, his head is it's a piece of, what's the game? How you pronounce it? Mahjong. His head is like a piece of one of the playable pieces, and when he remembers his name, his head goes back to normal. One guy comes in, his head is an orchid, and like this guy's head is a flower. Once he remembers his name, his head goes back to normal. One lady, her head was a tarot card, and so when you figure out that she was like, she went to like some type of crystal ball person that was trying to tell her or some type of fortune. And so it's interesting to see because like the people there, they're like, so the hotel changes. So it'll change to like who's ever's in a room. This one guy, he was bad in debt. He was a avid gambler. They show him like at the beginning of the second episode, he's running to this phone booth trying to call somebody, which I think you find out was his mother he was trying to call. He gets killed by some guys he owed money to. That's the guy, his head was the Mahjong piece. So he comes in and he's like, hey, everybody, I want to play this in my room. Let's play. And it's like, why are you so adamant about playing? That's when they find out he's an avid gambler. Then he realizes he finds memories and things in his room that shows him I got killed because I had a lot of debt that I owed. He looks back on memories. He looked where he stole money from his parents to like try to pay off debt. So it goes into like kind of some deep stuff with some of the characters they got in there. The last guy that came in, I think he was a student or a detective or something, and he got killed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a pretty interesting show. I like where they're going. I think there's gonna be something that kind of ups the intensity at some point, because now they're just kind of like people coming into the hotel being introduced, and they're kind of like, you know, showing how the hotel works. But it's pretty interesting, like kind of I'm not gonna say thriller, but more of those like right now it kind of feels like a tad bit of a slow burn. But again, it's just the first 3 episodes, so they're kind of trying to, you know, get things set up. I like it so far. It's an interesting concept. Some people can leave. Supposedly there's like a 1 in 50,000 chance, like if you leave, your memories are erased, so you can, I guess, go back potentially to the real world or maybe move on to the next. But there's a chance that a person actually leaves, goes back, and they remember everything that happened at that hotel, but you're not supposed to. So that'll be an interesting type of thing to see how they explain that. Yeah, I actually been enjoying this one so far. It's a pretty cool watch. Outside of my realm, but like I said, I saw from that trailer, it looks like there's gonna be some crazy stuff happening later, but I don't know just yet. But it's pretty cool so far. So I checked out Tasokare Hotel, and I'm liking it so far.
Okay. You know, it's that's something that's outside the purview of No Level Cap a little bit. Normally we tend to do more like action oriented, or you know, like maybe occasionally we'll talk about some sci-fi or something like that, some mecha, but even that's still action. So that's pretty cool that you went out and checked something out like that. Although like you tend to be like the horror guy too. So I mean, like,
yeah, that's why I was like, this kind of has like a kind of macabre horror-esque, you know, suspense type thing. So I also do enjoy those things too. So
all right, check that out. It slightly reminded me of Death Parade a little bit.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I was thinking of.
Funny enough, Devin and I actually watched the same anime. I was going to speak on it as well, and like the comparison to Death Parade. Yeah,
I was thinking like maybe nobody else will watch. I apologize, serious.
No. You're totally fine. No, you're totally fine.
Well, I'm pretty sure you can add something else onto it that I probably didn't. Yeah.
Dang, I should have. Well, actually, I didn't know because Devin had said he was gonna watch. What was it, Orb?
Yeah, I was watching Orb, and I thought about it. I don't think that one. I guess it kind of qualified as like 2025 because I think it's still ongoing.
Yeah, it's ongoing. It's carrying over. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I understand you wanted to pick like something from the winter, so that makes sense. Yeah. Did anybody watch more than one anime?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's how we'll do that. We'll just kind of shift around a little bit. So I'll go first because I watched like 3 or 4 really. So one of the ones I watched was called Mashin creator Wataru, and it was like a remake of I guess a remake of like the anime from the 90s, and it was about this kid who got isekai'd into this world, but it was like kind of like old school isekai. An old school isekai had like 2 different things it would do. Oftentimes it was designed for like, it would be like a woman going into like a alternate world, and then she might experience a romance, or she might have to, you know, fight to protect the kingdom or something like that. So you have stuff like Fushigi Yugi or Vision of Escaflowne and stuff like that, or Magic Knight Ray Earth, some real anime classics from the 90s. And then other times it would be like a kid got sent to a fairy tale world, and then they would get a chance to like fight and do cool stuff. And it was really more designed for like kids to like, you know, have fun in like an alternate world. And there are tons of those too. Digimon is probably the one that's the most popular that most people will recognize. So, but there are tons of them, and Wataru was one of those. And so I decided to check it out. They kind of reworked this one. It's like in this world, Wataru is a YouTuber, like a dragon tuber, aiming to become like, you know, like this big deal. He want to be like a big streamer, which lines up with like what a lot of kids today would want. And so he was starting to work on his plan to become like a big YouTuber. And then suddenly he gets sent away. There's like this power outage, and him and his cousin are transported to this alternate world. But Wataru wakes up alone. He's like by himself, and he's stuck up in the clouds, and he has no idea what to do. And then like he suddenly is like, oh, and he like accidentally creates blocks, like the Minecraft blocks. And he's like, huh, can I just keep making these? And he makes a whole bunch of them. And he's like, oh, well, I can just get down off these blocks. And so he just starts platforming and just creating blocks and just getting himself down. He gets himself down into like this world. And immediately he's like, they're told like, oh, you're the guy that's supposed to save our world. And it was cool that they made like a little twist where he's like, oh, I'm supposed to save the world, and he's still trying to be a YouTuber, like a dragon tuber, and so he just like puts up his camera. He's like, hey guys, I'm about to save the world. Come see me. Come check it out. And so like it's like this really cool moment of like, yeah, I mean, I guess that's how kids that want to be streamers, they just be like, oh, I'm about to do some wacky shit and save the world. And so like it's there's a lot of YouTube parodies. They're in this fantasy world, and the villains all pretend like they're streamers, even though there's no streaming technology in this world. And there's a funny little twist here. In Wataru's like in the regular world, there's this one chick, there's this one tiny girl that like is a VTuber, and you know she has like a little fairy avatar or whatever, and she's like the most popular YouTuber. And so like he goes to this other world, and she exists in that world too for some reason. And so you find out she's not a VTuber. That's just her. That's just what she looks like. And so he's like, oh, cool, I get to take photos with you. And he's like taking pictures and like, oh, I'm hanging out with this popular YouTuber. And like, it's them. And then gradually they start running into the villains, the people that are like fucking the world up. And one of the people fucking the world up is like an old man. And he's constantly forcing people to subscribe to his channel. But there's no technology there. So they're just sitting there in like a building, and they're just putting along these like stone license plates, basically. And to subscribe to the channel, all you do is like put your thumb on there. It's like, yep, there it is. And it's like your thumbprints there. And everybody's just stuck there subscribing to the channel pointlessly forever. It's like, why am I doing this? What's the point? And so like Wataru's like, oh, I'm gonna go save y'all. And he's like, oh, he doesn't know how to do it at first, but eventually he like uses the blocks to create like this little Minecraft robot. And at first I was like, please don't let it be that he just got to fight with blocks. Because Sentai did that. Sentai had like their own Minecraft show one time. And I was like, I'm not a fan of Minecraft, so that's not saving me. Yeah, so like I was like, man, please don't let this be some weird Super Sentai thing where he's just stuck with like fighting with the blocks, because they look really weird in this world. Because at least with Sentai, they tried to make the blocks look like an actual mecha. This was just blocks. And then like all of a sudden this fucking giant dragon comes down. Ryujin Maru, he comes down and he's like, all right, I got you. And so he just puts a spell. He like hits it with a bolt of lightning, and suddenly the blocks turn into like an actual mech. But it's like a little chibi mech. It's like a little mini mech. And so like he uses the mini mech to save the world from like this subscribe to my channel old man. And like the old man's got his own mech for some reason. And that's the only thing that, you know, the only real tech that they have is like these big ass mechs, these big ass machines, as they call them. And so like it was like a really fun experience. I'm probably not gonna go too much further. I watched like the first 3. I may watch one more episode, because like Wataru's cousin was lost and he never found him. And like across like 3 episodes, he hasn't found him yet. I'm like, all right, let's see how that wraps up. And then I after that, I'll probably stop, because it is very clearly designed for children. You can tell. And I mean, I knew it, but I thought it was gonna be more along the lines of like your average Sentai, instead of like what it is, which is like a lot, probably more than the 5 to 8 year old range. And so like if you're an anime fan and you want to get your kids into anime, I think this is a perfect anime, because it's like a little fun adventure. They have like these cute little puns, and like the characters are all adorable. And you know, there are a lot of jokes that, you know, they'll be able, like the kids will be able to catch, and like the few that they can't catch, you can explain, because there's no secretly an adult joke. Like there's not much of that in there. So it's just having fun. I do like the designs, and I did like the mecha fights, because there's a point where like the protagonist is like, he summons his mech and he's like, all right, let's go. And like the villain was like, well, I'll tell you what, let's do this. And he just like shoots a shrink ray at him. And Ryujin Maru is still like really confident, because even though he's been shrunk down to like the size of like a human instead of like being like a big machine, he's like, yeah, let's still go. We not gonna be slowed down by this. And they start to run at him, and all of a sudden, like the dude's like, oh, the villain's like, oh, you gonna still run at me? And just starts pulling out his weapon, starts shooting at him, and he's like, oh wait, this is a terrible idea, and start running away like, oh shit, we should have thought about this. And so like I like that. I did enjoy that. I was like having a good time, but like I it's not the kind of time I was like hoping for. I wouldn't really rate it or anything like that, because I'm probably not gonna finish it. I don't mind anime that are designed for kids, like Shadowverse Flame or like Digimon
like
Ghost Story. They have their own appeal if you know what you're getting into, but this one was aimed just a coach too young to where I was like, all right, this still not too much. It's still too much for me. Rakeem, what's one of yours that you checked out?
So one of the ones I checked out very recently, I'm still pretty early, Ubel Blatt. I did not know anything about this anime. I remember seeing the previews for it. It was pretty intense. And wow, when you see the intro, just like the song intro, the typical intro, these people heads going off. I'm like, whoa, they letting you know off rip. This anime ain't playing no games. So it starts off with your protagonist. It starts off with a going into the past where this kingdom has these 7 heroes. They're like lauded and have this power. But you find out from jump, they don't lie. Like this is in most animes, this be a plot point. From jump, they lied to you. It was actually a group of 14 heroes, and it was told to the people that they were in a war and a kingdom was attacking them. And it was told to the people that half the people in the group betrayed the kingdom for the other kingdom. They let you know from jump that didn't happen. So the 7 heroes that were lauded betrayed their own group and killed off a good portion of those guys in the group. That's their opening. And they're like, hey, these heroes of this kingdom, they lied. They're like ruthless and they killed these people, and they show like the last remnants of that group. Like, why did you betray us? What happened? And they just killed them dudes. Fast forward and you get to see like what's happening in the kingdom modern day, and just to show how brutal. This is a very brutal world. How brutal this world is. The opening scene from there is like some people, some really impoverished looking people at a border crossing, and there's a priest there, and he's going off about, hey man, these people across the border illegally, gotta kill them. They gotta get murdered, and just like taking people and trying to kill them. I mean, it basically like hanging them and stabbing them and shit. It was rough. And there's like this little girl who's there, and they found her. She snuck in on a cart because the border crossing is like before you even get to the kingdom, it's like this big area that's blocked off by this like giant mountain chasm of spikes, like these big spikes. You find out what those are later. And the protagonist comes in, he saves the girl. He's very striking because he doesn't look anything like any normal person. He's got like these elfish ears, these red eyes, and he turned out to be a pretty good swordsman. And it ends up where the chaos he creates, like this priest and these group of people who are trying to kill him. The chaos he creates, there's another gentleman who comes in as well, allows him to escape and go off. And basically the whole first episode is them trying to get across the border. So they try to go into this smuggling ring. There's a lady there. It's kind of like a cabaret style club, women in kind of tight clothes or whatever. And they're secretly smuggling people across the border for a fee. And even there, that same group of priests are like, yeah, we know what you paid this dude off to get across. Nah, we still about that Anna. We still want to kill y'all. Like these people are ruthless in this anime. They like just comically evil. But the main plot point that got me into the show, cause I was like, oh, this is interesting, is that you find out the protagonist in like the first episode, he was there when the original heroes got killed. Thing is, that happened 20 years ago, and he still looks like a child. So that's like a major plot point. And then you go back into the past, he looks completely different. Not only that, you find out he was there, you find out he was killed by them. He was one of the heroes who got killed. But he's completely changed. He changed his name. His name is Coinzo. He had a different name back then. And that's like the early plot point. Like, okay, what the fuck happened where this dude got killed by these heroes, and he looks completely different. He doesn't even look like the same race. You find out he was able to regenerate by being exposed to moonlight. They fight this troll demon thing in the chasm trying to go across the border. He basically gets killed by it, but because the moonlight shined on him, he was able to regenerate. That's like another part of it. And then you find out his main goal in the first, like the early episodes, is to get back and get revenge on the 7 heroes. And just, there's a lot of part of this anime that's very intriguing. It constantly keeps you on your tail. Like they don't waste any motion on this. There's no boring parts. Like they are hounded constantly. The action is really good. The evil dudes are douchebags, but they're almost comedically evil. There's like one priest who like, he just won't go down and he just finds ways to slime his way out of everything. I'm like, oh, you gotta go. There's like a mercenary dude who has a magic sword, but it has a fairy tied to it, like suffering. And every time he swings it, the fairy is screaming and it causes like a gigantic slash to come out. the shit was so terrible. The protagonist started crying. He's like, "Don't you do that to that fucking fairy, bro? This is fucked up. Like, don't do that shit, bro."
Wow.
But yeah, this I've only watched a few episodes, so I'm still early. But this show is intense. It is dark. The action is good, and I am intrigued by like, okay, is he going to get his revenge? We've watched revenge story animes before. They're nothing new. But I am like kind of captivated by like, okay, what happened to this dude? Well, this dude looked like he changed species, and he's already been killed and came back. So what happened there? And then find the full truth of everything that happened in the past with the how they were able to why they betrayed their group, what happened in certain instances, how much does he know, why is he so powerful, and will he be able to achieve his goal of killing the other 7 heroes? I am very interested in seeing that, so I'm gonna continue to watch this.
Yeah, that was a show that I thought about watching, and then like the more I thought about it, I was like, I just couldn't catch the vibe. I was like, man, I know what kind of show I'm gonna be in for, and I just am not in the mood for all the excess grim darkery of it all.
It's pretty dark.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it was crazy. And then I like looked up. I was like, how bad is it? So I went on. This is what I usually do. I went on Reddit, and I was like, all right, let's see what the comment thread's talking about. And the comment thread's full of people. They was like, man, I don't like this. Shit trash. I can't get with it. The manga was way darker. I said, okay.
It's one of them cases, huh?
So now
that's the problem, huh?
Yeah, I'm listening to Keem talk. They like, yeah, they edited all this shit out, and you talking about all the fucked up shit that you saw, and they like, yeah, they edited out the really fucked up shit. I'm like, okay, look, I can
see it.
I got the energy.
When you watching this anime, if you ever get, if Sage ain't gonna watch it, but if Terance or Will ever see this anime, it is like from jump. They let you know like this is not a nice universe.
I don't mind gritty universes, but like sometimes I need a protagonist that's strong enough to like deal with the grit and like not get hoed. I can't have you getting hoed like because the world is bad enough. So like I can't follow no soft nigga. And then the other thing is I need the protagonist to be a decent person.
Yeah, he ain't really soft so far. I will say that. And he seems pretty. I mean, I remember when I told you the part about the fairy. Dude was crying. He's like, how dare you make that creature suffer like that? So as far as protagonist goes, he's solid. He's solid to me.
I like the fact that you mentioned like, okay, he was not with but it's just it's one of those you trying too hard to make it dark. It's like, oh yeah, I touched this fairy to it and it screams in pain every time. Like, come on, man. Like
it stood out. I ain't gonna lie, it stood out.
It's so cartoonishly evil. So like, if you picture me, you like, hey Sage, you sound soft, you don't want to watch it, but like, once you get to a certain level of cruelty, I start laughing because I'm like, okay, you're doing too goddamn much.
They are like, definitely cartoonishly evil.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, man.
Yeah, it's definitely none of the villains have even had, at least at this point, I'm early, and the show hasn't been out that long. At this point, they have all been super evil just to be evil. And there's not a lot of nuance to the evil. The heroes all have nuance. They got backstories and they had these fucked up pasts. You trying to figure out what happened to them, and they trying to, survive in this weird kingdom. It's kind of like a remnant of like when you have people in power who don't care about anything but having power.
Yeah.
That's how your world looks. And that's kind of what it's representing.
It's kind of like the people who enjoy Berserk for like all the edginess, but all the other like elements of it, like the nuances of Guts' character and all the other characters.
Guts' character has incredible nuance.
Yeah, all that kind of flies over their head, but they're there for like the violence of it all. That's essentially what it kind of sounds like to me.
I mean, Berserk does have a lot of fans that like some of them are into the violence and some of them are into exactly what Terance said. All the intricacies of the character and like the storyline and shit like that. And they catch all that shit. So, I mean, like there's some value in telling stories that are like grim dark if you have the
capability.
The capability, the skill in your writing talent to make it be more than just the grim darkness of it all.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, if it's popular, you could get a full adaptation. The manga wrapped up about 5 years ago. It ran for a while. Ubel Blatt came out in like 2004 and ran in a monthly manga at that for like about 15 years. And then,
that's pretty good.
Up, so you might get the full story. I hope so.
I hope you do.
What's up, Terance?
Oh, no, I was just adjusting Mike.
No, I mean, like, I'm just telling, what anime you check out.
So we're just doing it one by one, right? Just one at a time?
Yeah.
So I'll actually follow up with Devin on a Tasokare Hotel, which is actually, I'm glad that he did watch it because it was good to get another perspective on it. Like he was, how can I put it? Not like a bit lighter, but I feel like he enjoyed it more than maybe I did, which I guess that's foreshadowing how I feel about it. But excuse me. But it's not that I'm like, I'll put it this way. When I watched the trailer for it, since Devin like talked all about the show and the characters and he already gave like the plot points away, I'm not going to talk about that aspect of it. But I'll say for me, what really intrigued me about it was when we were going through the anime trailers for the season, the trailer for it was really good and like gripped me because, as Devin was saying earlier, it reminded me a lot of Death Parade. And Death Parade, for those that don't know, Death Parade was an anime from like the 2010s that was really popular. And to this day, it's one of those shows where it's like
really cool.
Why it didn't get a second season is beyond me, but it is what it is. Death Parade, the characters they go to this place is essentially like purgatory, and they end up playing a game where it determines their fate, whether it pretty much shines a light on how they were in their actual life before they died. And whatever the outcome of the game is, it determines whether you essentially like go to the void, which I guess is just hell, or whether you're reincarnated into the world of the living again. And there's a lot more to it than that. There's a lot of emotional weight to the characters, like what happens during the games, the characteristics and the personalities of the people that are slowly exposed as they play the games, and the desperation gets high as they want to win because they want to try and get reincarnated. But yeah, I thought that this show was going to be a lot like that. And it has a similar premise, but it's not that.
Not
For
the
one,
same.
yeah, it's not the same. For one, you don't have the game aspect of it, which the game part of Death Parade is what really makes it work, is because that's what exposes a lot of the personality of the characters, like how they were in their previous life. If someone was like a criminal, you start to see like those tendencies come out and how they play the games and try to like game over the other person. If a person was like nicer, you see a bit more of the innocence that comes out as they're playing, stuff like that. Whereas this, like Devin said, the person in this case, they're not even dead. Like when they come to this hotel is kind of like, it's almost like you're having a near-death experience. Like the person is maybe on the brink of death, but it hasn't been determined if they're actually dead or not. And this place is kind of like they're holding for them until they get like their memories back, and then they can either return to the land of the living or they go on into the afterlife. For Death Parade, what really made it work was not only the games, but like the emotional weight that came along with it, and like the desperation that came from certain characters of wanting to win or wanting to live. And then others where you get to see like tragic backstories where they didn't deserve this fate and life just dealt them a bad hand. And then of course you also have the two main characters, like the bartender there, you're learning more about him, and you have the woman character that shows up and you're learning more about her backstory. She doesn't know anything about herself when she shows up. And this anime, Tasokare Hotel, is similar in that the main character, Neko, that Devin spoke of, she shows up and she doesn't know her name or anything. And as you go into your rooms in the hotel, you find stuff about yourself and you learn your name and your backstory and everything. And your face gets revealed. But I will say that the emotional weight of it, for all the characters they've shown so far, I've seen 3 episodes, it gets better. I think episode 3 is probably the best episode, just because the character that they revealed there, he actually turns out to be a criminal. And so that kind of turns things on its head, because up until that point, everybody had been like at least decent people. But in this case, you have somebody who's actually willing to like kill someone until they reveal to him that you can't kill somebody here, because if you do, you go to hell. And he's like, oh, well,
Oh
I
shit!
guess I better throw away my knife then. So they end up like having a truce at the end of episode 3. But yeah, I just feel like the emotional weight of the characters and the stories that they have is not as strong as Death Parade. It's not bad, but unfortunately, because that's the best thing that I could compare it to, it just doesn't live up to the expectation that I guess I had for it going into it, which, you know, you could say maybe it's my fault. If I hadn't watched Death Parade going into this, maybe I would feel differently about it. But because I watched an anime that in my mind is superior to it, it just doesn't match that. I will say the show isn't bad. I don't think it's bad. I think it's maybe, as it is right now, kind of like a maybe like a 6 or 7 out of 10 anime. I will say that the art style doesn't really do it any favors either. With Death Parade, it's like the art and the animation stands out. I mean, it's done by Madhouse, so they're always going to do it big.
I was sure about to look it up. I was like,
Yeah.
who did Death Parade?
Yeah, but in the case of Tasokare Hotel, the art's it's okay. It's fine. It's kind of like just standard anime. And what also doesn't help is this is actually based off a game, which I didn't know going into it. It's based off a mobile game, which is like a mystery, kind of like detective story where you are like, which when you watch the anime, it makes sense that's a game because each character that you meet, you're piecing together their you're piecing together the clues to find out who they were in their previous life. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if I'll personally stick with it, but I could see it scratching like a certain itch where it's like if you're into like mystery with a slight bit of I don't know if I can call it thriller, but just maybe more like mystery supernatural anime, I think it's fine. I think it's one that you could enjoy. Like if you enjoy detective stuff, I think this could be up your alley. But so far, I don't know. Maybe for the rest of the episodes, it like takes some drastic turn and gets way better. I kind of doubt it, but it's one of those that I think it's fine this season. I know we always talk about some of the better anime from the season, and I think it's actually kind of cool to talk about one that's just fine. Just to show that hey, there are a bunch of just anime, and not every one of them is bangers. So that's the case with this one, at least in my opinion.
Do you think if you pushed a little further, it might get better, or do you think it's just probably going to stay at that level?
I think it's probably going to stay at that level. And it's also one of those where, because it's based on a game, I kind of wonder how far they go with it. Like, is there an actual end to it? Like, what's the end game? I don't know. I don't personally like the characters enough to really see myself pushing through.
There we go. There we go.
I think that's really what it is that, I mean, the characters are fine, but there's nothing that just really draws me to them that makes me want to see where they end up at the end of the story, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had to look it up. I was like looking at some of the reactions to like later episodes. I looked up a little bit of the reaction to episode 5. I did see things like I guess I could say they heat up, as it were.
Okay.
I won't say anything. I won't get specific about it. I was just looking and seeing people just kind of like, I guess, more shocked than anything at some of the twists and reveals. And it's, I guess it doesn't take that long for it to ramp up a little bit more.
Okay.
But I'll say this, if it's the characters and you're like, oh man, I just don't care about these characters. Like, no amount of ramping up is going to make me give a fuck if I don't like the characters. If I'm already like, these characters suck.
And that's the thing, is that they don't suck. It's just, I
guess
there's just nothing really once again, it's kind of like comparing it to Death Parade, where it's just like they're not as compelling. Like, it's just a different emotional weight. They just the characters overall, just as they are from what I saw from the first 3 episodes, they aren't really cutting it for me. But you saying that it does heat up, I'm kind of interested to see where it goes. I mean, I'm 3 episodes in, maybe might as well take a look at episodes 4 and 5 and see what happens there. But maybe by 5, if it still isn't my cup of tea, I probably just bounce out. Yeah.
How long is do we know how long the runtime is? Like run episode count?
I don't have it in front of me, but I assume 12, probably, like 11 to 12. Let's see.
You're right. 12 episods.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I do have it from me. Yeah, 12 episodes, yeah.
I don't know if it's going to get a season 2 or whatever. Like maybe because, sometimes they have pre-greenlit season 2 and they're really just giving you the first 12 episodes now and they'll give you the next 12 later. So I don't know.
I will say the animation studio, their previous works are interesting.
Well, looking at it, I've never heard of this studio before. Studio PRA.
Yeah.
I'm like, who the fuck
last
is this?
one they did was a short form anime called, that's from 2015. Okay. Well, one of the ones that they did was a show called Bikini Warriors.
Wait, I remember hearing about that.
Take that as you will.
Yeah, that'll do it. That'll do it. Will, what'd you watch, man?
Okay, so I did watch 2 shows, but I will talk about this one here because I had to watch it because I watched one of the previous shows done by Studio Gohans. The show is called Momentary Lily. Right now, there are 6 episodes out, if I'm not mistaken. There should be 6 episodes, but I only watched the first 3. And the premise of this show, and I won't even lie to you, it started off immediately with 5 random like girls, and they swinging weapons, like mechanical weapons, like weapons that I feel like they could have torn off of a mecha if you've seen them. So, and I'm like, y'all really started off really fast in this episode. Like, they're just these colorful girls just flying around on these weapons, and they're killing these things with these machine heads and ethereal like bodies. I'm like, what am I
this is
getting
the
myself
one
into?
where the world is over with.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like the world's over with, and it's just them existing. But along the way, another girl appears, and her name is Renge, and she's like looking for a sign of life. She's like, I need to see if there's someone else here. But all she keeps seeing is like these little robots floating around. But she finally runs into the 5 girls that we seen at the beginning of the episode, and they take her in. But then after what I just told y'all, it opened on like high action. It switched to a cooking segment with the new girl, and I'm just like, this is a bit of a mood whiplash in a way, but I'll let it go. I'm gonna let this go, see where it goes. Immediately after the cooking segment, the little quick 3-minute cooking session they ate some good food because all they've been eating is just straight up canned food and other stuff. But she came around with stuff in her backpack. It was like, hey, I can cook for y'all. I got y'all. Let's eat. They had to fight another one of these things. They're called wild hunts. And out of nowhere, the new girl that's here manages to summon a weapon out of nowhere. She's just like, I know if I can sense it, you can too. She reaches her hand out, and this hoverboard-esque blade weapon just flies out of nowhere and just kills the thing immediately. And the girls behind her are like, she got a weapon too? Where did she get that from? Everybody was just confused as to how she got it, but they took her in and was like, you know what? We can all be friends. And then I really was just confused after the first episode because I'm like, we went from killing shit to cooking to killing to friendship. And I'm just like, good. This is weird. Let's continue. I did the next 2 episodes, and I won't even lie to you, man. Episode 2, they immediately killed somebody off. in the
Damn.
second episode. In the second episode,
one of the characters?
Yes, like
Oh,
one of
wow.
the characters. We just met these girls in the first episode, and they killed one of them off in that episode. And I'm just like, yo, y'all moving a little too quick. Y'all are moving way too quick for me. Like, I ain't got a chance to know this character or nothing. Y'all just took her out the way. Now, I'm not saying that's making the show bad for me, but it's just interesting how quickly they're moving through the thing. And I also learned that this is an original show. This doesn't have any other material, apparently. So this is an original show with another company. I think it's called Shochiku or Sochiku. That's the other company that they did this show with. So, yeah, it's a lot kind of moving on, moving fast and everything. Like, it has really interesting action. The animation is really cool, but with it being Gohan's and me having watched one of their last show, which was called The Girl I Like Forgot Her Glasses, it has that. If you've seen any episodes of how that looks, it has that same look where like some things kind of look uncannily real in places, but like everything is like cute. And then there's some things that look real, and then the hair is the thing that really irked me because when they got to like the high action scenes, things seemed a little too busy. But it seemed like they were also like getting more hair the more they moved. So it was like that hair would move forward, but then it felt like they
everything
were
looks like
generating
super
more
shiny.
That sounds like
yeah, that's the other
Gohan's.
thing too. That's definitely Gohan's.
Yeah,
I didn't
that's
know
Gohan's
that.
loves
thing, yeah.
doing too much sometimes. Like they like experts at like, hey man, you don't got to do all of this. Like, yeah, we're gonna do all of this. Like, all right.
Yeah, and they doing it in this show. I ain't gonna lie to you, man, because I won't lie. Some people definitely have said in like comments when I was reading about the show, they were like, it looks interesting, it looks cool, but man, I got a bit of a headache with some of this movement they got going on because there's so much happening when stuff starts getting crazy. And I was like, I could kind of see where people start getting their headaches at or start feeling a little dizzy behind the stuff that they're doing. It's too much happening on the screen. But other than that, it's okay for the 3 episodes that I watched. Like I said, and I noticed also every episode is named after like a food that they are cooking that episode. I noticed that. So every episode is named after something that the new girl is gonna cook the girls. But I'm more scared that by episode 2 we lost a girl already. I don't know what we gonna see going forward because I'm scared to see that we might end up losing another girl in like another episode. So I'm gonna continue to watch it to see where it goes. I love it. Well, I ain't gonna say I love it. I love like some of the designs and the weapons and whatnot because I think this could definitely make for like a video game if they wanted to make one. Because I feel like it could come off as a video game, but I don't know, man. I'm kind of 50-50 on it, and I do have to show this too. They have their weapons are named after like mythological things, like like Gleipnir, Gungnir, Tyrfing, Midgard, Surt. I was just like, y'all really went in on this.
This really sound like a weak ass wannabe Sympho Gear.
I mean, it could,
but it sound like they don't remember
no.
what made Sympho Gear so hype in the first place. So it's not gonna hit like that.
I'll go and give you this real short one, then we're gonna pass it on. What it is to me is that this is cute girls doing cute things. There's actions, there's action scenes, there's mech, there's cooking, there's friendship. But there's also the fact that all these girls kind of don't have necessarily their memories. And like the new girl that I mentioned, the one that cooks Renge, she doesn't have her memories in place like everyone else thinks they do. So everyone kind of remembers when they met someone. She don't remember nothing, but all she has to go by are these pictures in her phone from like a social media site of someone that they know, that every one of them kind of knows. And they're just like, oh, I've seen this place before. So that's coming into play now. Whereas like we're gonna see where this leads to. It's like, oh, this person passed through here. I have this picture. This is the last time I seen something or heard from this person. So I think the story can go somewhere, but I'm kind of scared of what they're doing with it, really. I am. I want to see what episode 4 and 5 may bring to the table before I drop it. I'm being real generous, truthfully. I'm being generous with it, and I guess I'm just a generous soul these days. But I'm gonna see what they do with it. If it gets a little too out of hand with all the crazy action, though, I may end up dropping it.
I mean, I've seen already that it's one of the lowest. It is the lowest, well, the third lowest rated winter anime. Now, granted, it's not that many episodes out, but still, that's not. Yeah. It's like a 5.5 on my anime list. So
yeah, I did see that, and I was just like, wow, y'all ain't really fucking with this. I'm just trying to see where it go and see what's got it looking like that at this point.
I do think it's a bad idea to review. I mean, to like start, assigning a number to a show that's barely even that's not even halfway over yet.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right, Keem, what's the next anime you checked out?
So yeah, I was doing a continuation of last year, and what's going on right now is the next part of Kinnikuman. So I will say, like, I've enjoyed Kinnikuman and I've watched it a lot. But when I'm watching this, I'm like, man, this is probably way harder to get into for somebody who isn't familiar with IP. Because I have a history with this anime for over 20 years. I know who the characters are. I played them in video games. I watched spin-off anime. I've read the manga, so I know who the characters are, how they got here, everything. But if you don't, and they've done recaps, they've done a lot of like flashbacks to previous parts. But like, if you don't know these characters like I do, the emotional weight of some of these scenes don't hit the same. Like a big part of this show is where they drop back in, because where they started is where the manga restarted in the 2010s when they brought the manga back from the past.
Right.
And it had been dormant for almost 20 years. So where they started was like this kind of unification of these different factions that had been at war with each other over the course of the manga and the anime, and they finally made peace. So it's essentially like if all the New Japan factions were like, you know what, Bullet Club, Chaos, we're gonna shake hands. And why you doing that? A whole new faction showed up and said, no, fuck that. Nah, fuck that. We on some bullshit. That's basically what that's exactly. They're like, House of Torture showed up like, nah, buddy, ain't none of that finna happen. So like a big theme of this season, or these 2 seasons, been like the different ideologies of different groups of factions and like these organizations. So like you have the Seigi Chojin with like the main character Chojin, the good guys, traditional superheroes. You have the perfect Chojin, which are like, they have the identity of like, you have to seek perfection and absolute victory or death, and there's nothing in between there. And you have like the Akuma Chojin. Yes, and you have the Akuma Chojin, and you have the Akuma Chojin with like the villains from the last arc, who are like, it's kind of like their redemption story. Like it's like they were like the villains of the last show. They had like these certain beliefs, and they still kind of fuck with the dark shit, but they have over the course of time built up, I guess, a little more principles in like what they are and like how close they've gotten together too. So they're kind of all fighting each other. Yes, they're like the new 20s. They got like a symbol and everything. They throw the devil horns like Akuma Chojin. Yeah, bro. I ain't gonna lie, it's lit. It was lit. I love the matches because I mean, at the end of the day, Kinnikuman is the granddaddy of pro wrestling anime. So that's what we're here for. And it's not a super complex anime as far as story. Each fight kind of is a battle of like maybe certain ideologies. Like for instance, they had like an episode with Ramen Man this season. Ramen Man versus this other guy who was like this dragon dude who has like dragons on his arms. And for the first time in Ramen Man's history, he fought a dude who is also a martial artist. He's been the martial arts dude the whole manga. He's had nobody like him. And because he's fighting another martial artist, they have a mutual respect for each other that like a lot of other ones don't do. Like, even though this dude's a villain, he kind of is a little more honorable because he sees somebody just like him. And then Ramen Man sees himself in the dude as well. So when they're fighting each other, it's kind of like a clash of like, hey man, we just gonna throw hands. We martial artists, we just gonna throw hands and see who wins.
Yeah.
And then you kind of see some of his past in that element there too. And so far I have enjoyed the season. But even as I was watching, I'm like, they introduced a whole lot of new heroes. Kinnikuman has these really quirky villains. It's like basically like if you took tokusatsu monsters and put them in anime, because they'll be like, they got one dude who's just a giant faucet dude. He got faucet stuff. He's spurting out water. He can change from hot to cold. He puts steam everywhere. He can't see nothing. I told you the dude who had the dragons, he had twin dragons on his shoulders and they just stretch out. He can like grab you in the air and spin you in the air and shit, and they attack at different angles. There's a dude from a previous show named Black Hole Man. He has a giant hole in his face. And if you get sucked in the hole, you're taken to an alternate dimension inside of his body where he can do whatever the hell he wants. So he can like break space-time barriers and shit. And he's a character from the previous show. And this season, he's actually kind of a good guy. He's kind of his story with it. So
face turn.
Yeah, he had a face turn a little bit. It's kind of like a face turn, but it's like we helping y'all out. But once we done with these dudes, we on your ass again, kind of situation. But but yeah, it's been a crazy season. It's been like the main things is that the Perfect Chosen new villain group, they have this win or die mentality. So after any match they lose, that's been a consistent thing. They've been trying to either off themselves or die on the sword, so to speak. And the other guys like to varying effects. Like some dudes like, hold on, buddy. You ain't go that far. And some dudes, they just did it. Like, hey man, that's it. And then some dudes, there was one fight where both dudes died. Like there was battle between these sea monster dudes. It was like the battle, like one of the previous villains from the previous arc was like an underwater villain. They were fighting underwater, and they had a new guy who was also like a fish. And they kind of went at each other, and there was a cool scene where there was this kid, and it was basically a kid realizing he likes heels because he watched the fish dude. And his dad was like, "Man, that dude back in the day, he was like one of the worst monsters, one of the worst villains. Man, screw that guy." The kid was like, "Nah, I'll fuck with him. Akuma Chojin, baby." That was a cool moment. That was a cool moment, man. I ain't gonna lie, that was a cool the show. And he kind of got a little redemption he didn't change who he was, but he stood on who he was. Like, I know who I am. And because they did that, the kid found respect for him, even though he was a villain. I thought that was cool. So yeah, that's been some cool episodes, and I'm really enjoying the wrestling matches because at the end of the day, Netflix has found this balance. I know a lot of people don't watch Netflix anime because it kind of has a stigma, but Netflix has found this balance of really putting these tournament style action anime in the forefront. They did it with Baki, they did it with King and Ashura, they did it with Record of Ragnarok, and it's working. Like all those shows are doing pretty well or have done well, and I think Kinnikuman is along similar lines to that. They kind of found a little bit of their niche in that regard. And I like the fact that they actually put a little bit of a budget behind this. It didn't look like garbage. My fear was that it was going to be like, okay, it's one of my favorite IPs of all time, but they're going to put no budget behind it. It's going to be Shinji Adventures and no one's going to care.
Oh, no.
This ain't no 3D. There's no 3D mess here. It's got decent animation, numbers, but it actually does a good job of recreating how I felt when I first got introduced to the IP. And I think if there are some people who like action anime and like wrestling, give this a shot. You might like it.
There's a Venn diagram for that. In fact, actually, if you just like wrestling and you think you might like and you want to try anime, this would probably be a great first one for you to try, just because it's like I mean, like just straight up wrestling with all the weird gimmicks and like the
Yep.
extra soap opera elements. Sounds like anime Lucha Underground, low key.
Oh
Mm.
yes,
You know,
man.
definitely.
because
Not as
Lucha Underground
much.
used to get away with like killing characters. So
Oh no, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
they
actually,
did
that's
do
another
that.
part. Kinnikuman is actually very, very violent. It's a lot of
Yeah.
bleeding, a lot of death. I mean, there's death, but they also do the trope of like, did that character really die? Oh, we thought he was dead. He comes back 50 episodes later. You know, some stuff like that. They do that too.
Dang,
You know,
50 episodes
because
later.
it's so
50.
old that it created some
old.
of the it's so old it created some of the tropes we see today. Like literally. One big was like defeat means friendship is like one of the big themes of the show. A lot of the early characters that Kinnikuman befriended and became his friends were all villains. They were all like even Terry Man, who's like his best friend and the American representative. His whole thing when he
Yeah.
first started was that all he cared about was getting paid. And he had a gun, he would shoot people, and all he cared about was getting paid. He was a bounty hunter, essentially. And then Kinnikuman, once that man said something to a little kid, he slapped the shit out of him.
Oh,
He
shit.
said, not on my watch, buddy. And that changed, like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be a greedy asshole. So stuff like that, you know.
I had to look Terry Man up. He looked exactly what you think he would look like.
Yes, he
Yeah.
do. And his
He's
son
like
look
an
just like him.
American.
Yeah. He's
Does
inspired,
he look the way
inspired
he
by
does
Terry
in
Funk.
Ultimate Muscle?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you talking about, yeah.
Terry Kenyon is his son. This is
Okay.
his dad.
Kenyon is
Okay.
son.
Well,
Although
do
his
they
dad
look
does show up in that show
similar?
too. They look
Yeah,
just the same.
Terry.
Okay.
He just has shorter hair.
Okay.
That's the difference.
Mm.
Yeah. Terry the Grand Kenyon.
Hey, Will, you up, man? What's the other anime you watch?
All right, the other anime that I watch is actually on Disney Plus. Medalist. I chose to watch that because I was just like, let's see what this is about. And lo and behold, it's hitting that chord because it starts out with this guy who wants to be a figure skater. He's been wanting to be a figure skater for a long time, but we at the present time now with him being an adult, he's 26 years old. He works at this rink that's in his town. He also teaches children around that area too that wants to learn how to skate. But he's also an ice dancer, right? But his story, before we got to this point where we are now, is that he quote unquote started too late to get into being a figure skater. He started at 14, which is like that transitional period of him being in middle school going into high school. And at the time, he was doing his damnedest to get there. He was just like, I don't care about this age thing. I just want to get in there because I know I can do it. I love this. This is amazing to me. This is fun to me. This is my heart. I want to do it. But after, having a lot of, slips and falls and everything along the way, even though he became great at it, he couldn't win any competition. So this is where he's at right now. So as he's teaching at this rink, he ends up running into this young girl that's doing the same thing that he's doing, but she's like 3 years younger than what he was at the time when he tried to get into. She's like 11. She's like 11 or like 10, like in the fifth grade, 6th grade area. And she's constantly doing it, but he happened to catch her one time when she got in, and he was like, did you pay to get your way in here or no? Ended up chasing her out of the rink. Come to find out, she had been trading, and I kid you not, this is like a small plot point of it. She had been trading like worms out of the ground to the dude that runs the place because he has birds that need to be fed. So he'd be like, look, if you just give me worms to help me feed my birds, I'll let you into the rink so you can practice skating.
Wow.
But yeah, she had been doing that in secret because truthfully, she kind of has a bit of a bad life at school. She's not necessarily really well liked, or she's not really noticed a lot, and people kind of treat her like, well, the old trope where the kids are doing something in class and she tries to join in, and they just like, there's nothing really else for you to do. I mean, you don't need to worry about doing it. Don't worry about it. Go elsewhere. You're fine. Go away. They were treating her like that, and she can't really go tell her mom, who, in my opinion, after watching like the first 4 episodes, I watched 5. Episode 6 came out today, but her mom is like her biggest op early on from like the first episode. Yeah, because she did that thing, and this is the quote I'm gonna tell you, and everyone in here knows it. Harrison is the thief of joy. And that's what her mother did to her for the longest about this ice skating thing. And she's tried her hardest to do it. But luckily, our lead guy gave her a list of clubs and said, hey, you can try these places. Or you can come back here with me and I can teach you. Got her mom to bring her, and he showed her. He showed her mom she could do all this basic stuff already. I don't have to teach her this. She knows how to do these things. I could just teach her other stuff. That's it. But her mom was so overprotective of her about it. She was like, nah, she's not going to be ice skating. No, don't do it. She can't do it. And then she looked around. She's like, but she's too late trying to do this. She needs to get in school and do something with her life. These kids here have been doing this since they are 5. They've been doing this since they are 5. She's 11. We can't have her out here. She's not going to catch up with everybody else. The teacher said, and I quote, "You keep talking about the age of 5. This child is doing things that these 5-year-olds can't even pick up yet. Why are you not letting her do this? She enjoys it. This is her life. She loves it. He's constantly trying to like push her, like, hey, let your daughter join this club. I can help her." But she's fighting it until she did something amazing on the ice. And she was just like, I guess I can do it. I guess I can let her try it. It was like, I can let her do it for a little bit. But her whole goal was like, when she hits middle school,
time to give
she's
it
not
up.
skating no more. You got to get this up. So over the course of the episodes, even as he started teaching her, he's like, wow, she's learning all these new techniques within like a day's time, within a day and a half, 2 days, 2 lessons. She's picking it up. And some of these 5 and 6-year-olds can't even get this stuff done in a week. She's picking this up way faster than they can. Even some of the older kids here can't do this as quick as she can. And another part of it is that the young girl, her name's Inori, by the way, I forgot to mention that. She has some self-confidence issues, truthfully, I'm not gonna lie, because at a girl at her age, you know, emotions swing one way or they swing the other way. There's like no in between, like, okay, let's stop and breathe. It's more like, oh, I fucked up, I really can't do it. Or she just gets overly happy that she did a thing, you know. So yeah, she sees these other younger kids that are like great at it, and she's like, I can't compete with that. I can't. So why am I here? But then teacher talks her back into it, like, get in here. You can do it. We're going to work it out. We're going to get you in a competition. You're going to be great because you're already ahead of the curve. Even at your age, you can still do this. It's because he sees himself in her. That's the other thing, too. He sees himself. He's like, I couldn't do it because I feel bad about myself. But I know for a fact that I can get you there. We're going to get you there before this quote-unquote cutoff. And he's been working with her every episode, got her into a competition and everything. She took first place at her competition.
So is this like more of a traditional style sports type? Like,
yeah, it's figure skating.
Yeah, obviously, like it's figure skating, but is it like more? I guess is it more shonen style sports or more like its own thing?
I think it's more its own thing. I wouldn't say shonen because I know how the shonen thing kind of works itself out in a way. It doesn't necessarily have that full on shonen formula.
So like the focus isn't just the competitions.
Yeah, it isn't the competition. It's literally the focus is mostly their like kind of like their relationship as student and teacher and how he's trying to help her get over the hump.
So it's like a very mentor-mentee type of anime.
It's a mentor-mentee type thing because one of the episodes, one of the girls, one like small child was there with her parent, seeing her ice skating outfit and said, "Mom, I want to get a dress like that. I want to do figure skating." Because at that point, she was ready to give up. She was like, I don't want to be in this competition. I can't hang with these people. That little girl showed up and said, I want to do that. She looks so pretty. I want to do what she does. She seen that. She said, you know what? I'm going to get on this ice. I'm going to do this. I got it. So after that, it's just been that. And the best part, what I love, is that after that competition, her mother seen her do that and win it. She said, you know what? I'm sorry for not even seeing my child like that. I apologize. That was my fault. I shouldn't have treated you like that. Continue coming to these lessons. You got it. I'm so sorry for being that way.
I'm gonna say that sounds like an anime that has a very positive outcome, or at least to the point, you know, you
so far it's been pretty positive on the outcome. And I have never wanted to root more for a character than I have this little girl. I was like, I want her to win.
Yeah, sounds like a really good underdog kind of story.
Yeah. Well, what I'll say is that it's definitely one of the higher rated anime. It's like an 8 on my anime list, a little over an 8, which is pretty high. Like the low 9s is when you get to like some of the most legendary anime of all time. Like if you have an average score of over a 9, it tends to be like some of the better. Remember, like most of the time, a great anime tends to be in the 8 range.
Yeah, like you have a lot of like Full Metal Alchemist territory.
Right. Because I think Brotherhood, if I'm not mistaken, is like a 9 point something.
Brotherhood at one point was number 1, and I feel like there was but I know there was like maybe 1 or 2 other anime that came in and like knocked them off at one point.
I was just about to look at
and it's the number 1, and I think Attack on Titan was the one that replaced it.
Oh, really?
Okay.
That's not the one I was thinking of, but okay.
What were you thinking of?
Oh,
well, I was thinking that there was another anime that did it, but I can't remember the name of it. I think it was one of those where there was a point where it was highly rated, but then something happened to it and it kind of fell off. I think that's maybe what it was.
Why do I feel like you might have been? Are you talking about Free Run?
Talking about what?
Free Run. Because I know it's
Free Run?
pretty high.
No, not
No.
Free Run, but
He means something older than that.
yeah.
Oh, something older than that?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't think of what that might have been.
Free Run is a 9.3.
Whew.
And it's the actually I take it back. That's the number 1 ranked anime right now.
I gotta
Free Run?
Yeah.
Finish it, really.
It's very popular, so it makes sense.
Yeah, very popular.
But yeah, watch Medalist, y'all.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds really good.
Once again, this is outside. That's outside what we normally check out. But I did kind of expect y'all to go and get a little bit more outside the box a little bit. So I appreciate y'all. I'm gonna shotgun the last 2, and then I'm gonna pass it to Terance to do the last one. His last one.
Okay.
I'm back with Ishura, season 2 of Ishura. I like season 1 a lot. Season 2 is much better. Because season 1, a lot of season 1 was just world building, and it felt it's the kind of world building that I can vibe with, but a lot of people I know they get bored really quickly. And so, like, after you set up like 2 or 3 characters, people are like, all right, well, when are these characters gonna come together? Are they gonna fight? Like, let's just get to it. Like, what's the plot? And like the episode, like season 1, like the first half, so like 6 or 7 episodes was just like, okay, we introducing this character, this character, this character, this character, this character, and they introduced like I think a dozen characters or so before they finally got moving on like what was effectively like a civil war plot of like these 2 countries that should have been like were at one point kind of one country, but then like one side split off, and then like they were like, and then the other side was like, no, you don't get to split off, like it's just one country. And so like you see the war play out over the back half of season 1, but I mean that took a while for you to get to. Season 2 is not that. Season 2, they're still introducing characters, but from the very beginning, they start out with like countdown to disaster. Like like the first episode is like 5 days until disaster. 4 days to every episode. It's like only so many days till disaster. It's like over
Majora's
the first
Mask.
Oh shit. But yeah, like they're still introducing these characters, and they all have such varied backstories and varied powers, and it's kind of an idea that I wanted to write about at one point of like, what if you had isekai protagonists, but they weren't protagonists? They were just like causing chaos and problems and havoc. And you have all these characters that are just like, they have all these powers, but they're like just causing problems. Like everybody else is trying to live their regular Middle Ages lifestyle, and these people with these incredible powers just shaking shit up for no fucking reason. And sometimes you have good ones. Sometimes you've got like, there's the one episode where it's about this giant, and he's just a giant dude, and like he has this kid that comes up to him every day, and it's like, you don't ever do anything, you're boring, and like you say you gonna go fight what? Like you big, but like you ain't no fighter, you don't train, you don't do anything. Come to find out, he's like this fantastic archer, but he's also a fucking giant. So like his arrows are like fucking trees, like tree trunks, and he'll just send it up into the sky, and like the arrow is so, like the force of his arrow is so powerful it can change the weather. He protected the city that he watches over, and it's like all the little people, literally for him, all the little people, he's like protecting them. Like there was like this fucking flood that came, and he was like, nah, no flood today, and he just sent a bunch of arrows up into the sky and just like re-diverted the course of the flood because he has that kind of power. And then like there's another character that's like a vampire, and like their vampirism is airborne. Think about that for a second. All you have to do is get within them, and then like they turn you into effectively a corpse. That's what they call it on the show. They turn you into a corpse. And like once they turn you into a corpse, they basically have complete control over you. Like they can make you do things, and you don't even realize, like at first you don't even realize they're making you do things. And so like there's this dude, and it's so sad because he's like just trying to take up a job and live a regular life. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go out here and do these surveys. And he goes over to this mysterious castle, and he like pinpricks himself on like some roses. And then like this chick comes out, the vampire chick comes out. She's like, hey, come on in. Let me tend to that. And at first you're thinking, oh, maybe it's the pinprick, because like later on he goes back and delivers this letter to like the dude who gave him the job. And they're like, oh, yeah, so about this letter, you went to a vampire's place, and dude's like, what do you mean? And they turned you into a corpse. He was like, that didn't happen to me. What are you talking about? It's like, oh yeah, you already under a spell. And at first you're like, oh, is it when he like pinpricked, or did she like grab him at some point? And you find out like at the end of the episode, it's like airborne. You're like, bro, what the fuck? So like anybody she comes in contact with, anybody she can immediately turn them into like whatever she wants. And so like that's part of it. And then like there's another episode where you see a super scientist, and it's just this old lady, and she created effectively a robot homunculus. And like the outer shell is like a robot that can generate like magic. Like normally, if you come from outside the world, it's like Keem, you remember Nanahoshi from Mushoku Tensei?
Yeah, of course.
Remember she had no magic?
Right.
Because she was from the other world. It's just like that. Like she has no any of the outside visitors. They have their own abilities that they might have, but they can't use the world's magic. But like through this, the scientist chick, like the old lady scientist, she's able to like create a homunculus that can use magic. And so like now she suddenly has access to magic, and she gave the homunculus its own personality. And so it thinks like a kid, but it's constantly adapting and growing, and she made it immortal. And so like it's funny to see like all these different personalities clash against each other, and they all have their own goals and shit. And like the first 5 episodes really build to like a big conclusion. And then at the end, you see like, oh, that's the disaster you meant. Fuck. So yeah, I've been having a fantastic time with Ishura. I think season 2 is better than season 1, and I hope to God that they keep doing this show, because that's usually my flaw with like fantasy anime, is that they only run a season or 2, and then just this thing, the show can't maintain itself, which is a lot of isekai's problems. Like by the time you get to season 2, it's like, all right, well, you've kind of run dry on what was cool about this show, and I'm done. Or they wrap up too soon, and it's like, man, this shit was just getting good, and like now you're done. Like you just finished the world building. Now it's time to actually tell the story. It's like, no, we're done. It's like, oh man, what a waste of time. So I hope they keep going. And then the other anime, real quick, is from Bureaucrat to Villainous. Dad's been reincarnated. We watched the trailer for this, and at first I was like, oh, I might check this out. This seems kind of funny, but I had no plans on checking it out. And I am going to spoil something here. One of the things that it turns out is that his family realizes he's like been reincarnated into an isekai, or really into like a video game. His family, like about episode 5, they realize he's been put into a video game, and it shifts things so much, and it's so fucking funny. Because like the basic idea is like this 52-year-old guy, he's like a civil servant, and he gets reborn as the villainess of his daughter's favorite video game. And it's like an otome game, and like the thing is, he's a nerd, his wife's a nerd, and his daughter's a nerd. They're all just giant fucking otaku. And like, in fact, I think episode 5, they reintroduced the daughter, and the daughter's like, yep, I'm 100% full-blown purebred geek. And I was like, all right. It's so fucking funny. And like, throw out all the expectations you have of like, oh, I'm a isekai protagonist, and so I'm finna create this harem and all this other shit. That nigga he does not see people like that. Like he's in this world, and he sees them still as people, but he's like an actual adult, and he treats these kids like kids. And so there's this part where he's like, oh, I don't want to change the plot of the game, but so he like he knows he's like the villain. He's been reincarnated as the villain, but like he like meets the hero of the game, and he's like, oh, I don't want to change the plot of the game. And I think my daughter, the way it went was like, I'm supposed to insult the protagonist, and then she gets inspired to study magic, because it's like the usual plot of any Ultima game where like the incoming character is like a peasant girl coming into like this royalty and like all these fucking nobles and shit, and she doesn't fit in, and like the rich girl is like looking down on her and tries to bully her and shit. And so he's like, all right, I'm supposed to do that. And then the result is that she goes off to like study magic and takes it super seriously and becomes like a strong magician or whatever. And like he goes over there and talks to her, and he's like, oh, but he slips up, because at first he's like, I heard that you got in based off of like how hard you studied and this, that, and the third. And he's like about to insult her, but instead he slips into dad mode, and he compliments her parents for raising such a good kid. And I was like, bro, And it just like puts up proud dad mode activated. I was like, yo, man. And that's the kind of like wholesome stuff you can expect. He's never at any point like, oh yeah, you know, I could hit on one of the girls on this show, or I could that it never even enters. Of course, he is a girl, so it would be like a lesbian, but like still, he never thinks about anything like, oh, I can get around and fill up a girl. Like none of that shit. All that weird, you know, creepy shit is tossed out. It's just him trying to be like a good person, and that right there is a huge shift that like made it easier to watch. And then there's other parts that just it's willing to have fun with the concept. Like he has this special power. Any action he takes as himself is translated into something that would make sense for the character in the world, and it's called the elegance cheat. And like the music, like a little video game music plays every time he does it. It's like, all right, man. Like I'm just having a blast. And like even 4 episodes in, I was having a blast. And finally, the 5th episode shows like he's not dead; he's just in a coma. And like the mom finds out he's in a coma. Well, the mom sees him in a coma, and she calls her daughter, and the daughter's like, "Oh no!" And then she finally comes back, and she sees her game. She left the game on, and she's like, "What?" And like it says, the character that the dad's been reincarnated into is Grace. His name is Kenzaburo. Well, the dialogue screen says Grace, but in parentheses it says Kenzaburo. She's like, "Oh, what? Like, what's going on?" And then she like realizes she can't control the characters, but she can press X to progress the story. And so like as soon as her mom comes home, she's like, "So I this is gonna sound crazy, but I've been thinking about it. This is the only thing I can come up with. I think Dad's in my video game." And the mom's like, "All right." So what do you mean, all right? Like, this ain't the first time I done heard this, girl. You don't know Isekai been around since 1983. And she starts talking about the never-ending story and Aura Battler Dunbon, the first Isekai. She just starts going. She has a whole history. And finally, the daughter's like, "All right, Mom, I got it. Oh, wow. You know about Isekai."
Okay.
And so they just sit together, just like trying to play through and help him where they can help. And it's like the idea you hope is like eventually he's able to come back to his world. And the only thing I gotta say, like the only criticism I have is I like the family so much that I kind of wish that it was just a story about a nerd ass family. Because like occasionally you get glimpses of what their life was like before they, before he got sucked into the game, and it's like, oh, this is adorable and it's funny and relatable because it's like just a nerd family and like a dad and a mom still being nerdy but also being like good parents. I'm like, yeah, just do more of that. So, I mean, but it's still, all in all, it's a great show. I've been having a blast with it. I was on episode, I think 4. I think 5 is out. So I'm probably going to check that out, actually, not too long after we get off here. All right. Who's left?
Me.
Go ahead, Terance.
So, the second anime that I watched, which it actually turned out to be quite a surprise, because I watched the first episode and I was like, that was fine. But then I watched episode 2 and half of episode 3. I unfortunately didn't get to finish it before we started filming. But I have to say, I like where it's going so far. And that's going to be, it's one of those long name ones. I may be a guild receptionist, but I'll solo any boss to clock out on time. I watched that one.
Oh,
I watched that one.
I know what you're talking about.
I'll just set up the premise for it. So it's about this, guild receptionist, which is the cool thing about this anime is they're all adult characters, or they're like early 20s, maybe like 18, 19, like they are adults. Like none of them are like teenagers or anything like that running around. So that is a cool part about
Already
it.
got my interest.
Yeah, but it's about this woman who is a guild receptionist. She essentially just wants that's actually a cool thing about this anime that makes it relatable is she just wants to work a regular 9 to 5, make her money. She wants to get her pension. She wants to pay off her house, and she wants to retire. She just wants to live a cozy, like she wants to work so that she can essentially retire later on in life. Like she doesn't want like a complex life. She doesn't want to be someone who is like a grand adventurer or anything like that. She just wants her basic 9 to 5 so she gets her benefits, she can pay off her house and retire later on. So, with all that in mind, because this is in a world where you have like adventurers, of course, like, fantasy world where you have adventurers who are part of guilds and they go out on quests and everything. The challenge that she faces is there's like certain bosses that a lot of these guilds and adventurers they can't beat, and so it creates more work for her, which results in her having to do overtime. And she's so frustrated at the overtime that she's like, you know what, F it, I'm gonna just go take out these bosses myself. So one night, after dealing with just like a lot of paperwork from these guilds, just continuously not being able to beat these bosses or just messing up the dungeons or whatever, it shows this one group that's fighting this boss and they're having a tough time with it. She comes in like she's disguised, like she has a different outfit on. She puts like a hood over her. You would think she would wear a mask or something, but I guess the hood is good enough. And she comes in and she just one-shots the boss. And the guild is so taken aback by it. Like news of like her spreads. Like apparently there's some other incident that happened with her that like people just know her as the executioner. They don't know that it's this guild receptionist that's the executioner. Like the identity of the executioner is still a mystery to the town folk. But one of the guys from the guild that saw her one shot the boss did get a look at her face and recognized her as one of the guild receptionists. So he starts going to the reception desk where she is and like starts he doesn't expose her identity. Like he's trying to get friendly with her because he wants her to join their guild, but she does not want to join the guild at all. Fast forward, there's an incident in the second episode where this guy takes control of this monster, and the monster actually, like in the chaos, like one of the rocks that the monster throws lands right on her house and like destroys it. So she's like, fuck you, essentially, and dresses up as the executioner again and goes and one-shots the monster that's wreaking havoc. And then it's at that point that one of the higher guild members, he actually has an ability, which I guess I might as well explain that now. How this world works, which is kind of interesting, is I don't know if everyone has it or if it's just the adventurers. I guess it's like if you're chosen, whatever. There's like this thing called skills in this world, and there's different level of skills, or there's like 3 levels that they've shown so far, I think. There's like, I forgot what the bottom 2 are, but at the top of the skills are Dia skills, which are like godlike skills, and or like they're legendary skills essentially. And this guild receptionist, she has a Dia skill. And back to the episode, at the end of the episode, one of the guild members, his skill is it allows him to look at an area, slow down time, and he can see, rewind time, and he can see what happened in place at that time. And so he's able to see where the receptionist, where the executioner or receptionist was, and see her identity. So he approaches her in episode 3, and he's like, "Yeah, I know who you are. Come with me to the guild master place." And
No.
and she's very resistant at first, but she kind of has no choice. Otherwise, her identity is her cover is gonna be blown. And so he's trying to recruit her to go on this dangerous exposition. He says it's just gonna be a one-time thing, and from there the episode continues on. And I don't know what happens at that point, but it's actually been an interesting show so far. And it's one where whenever like a certain studio does something, you kind of want to check it out just because that studio has a pedigree for good work. And this is being done by Cloverworks. And for those that don't know, Cloverworks, they've done Spy Family. They've done a bunch of other shows I can't think of off the top of my head, but they're known for quality anime. And I have to say this one, like from an art style and animation perspective, it is quite good. The story, just on the 3 episodes that I've seen, it is getting interesting. The world, it seems like there's interesting things that they can explore with it. My only concern is the same kind of concern that you have, Sage, when it comes to these fantasy anime is, are they in it for the long haul? Is it going to be one of those where you get invested and it cuts off at a certain point and it never returns for another season? It's essentially a go read the manga type of anime. That's my only concern with it, but I will say I like it so far. I like it more than I thought I would. Going into it with the first episode, I was kind of mixed about it, but then the second episode added more layers to it, and the third episode made things even more interesting. So I'm actually willing to continue with this one until there's maybe a point where it's like, all right, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. But yeah, I like it. I like it.
Do they explain why she's so overpowered, or is it just like not really thought about?
So what happened was there was a night where she was doing overtime. There was like this festival that was going on. That's like a big deal that I guess happens like once every year, and she really wanted to go to it, but she had to do overtime. And once she was finally done and she got to the festival was over. And she kind of just at that point just broke down and kind of just, I guess, just prayed to the gods, just like, if you can just give me a way to get out of this overtime, just how can I make my life better? I just want to work my regular 9 to 5, get paid, live in my nice house, and just live a comfortable life. Like, please, gods, can you give me the ability to do that? And they give her the Dia skill. That's just how it happens. It hasn't been explained any further how exactly the Dia skills work in terms of like power leveling and everything, but she is, so far, has been shown to be really, really powerful. So yeah.
Yeah, that was another one that I thought about. I like the concept. I think overpowered characters, like I'm exhausted with overpowered characters in serious settings. Like I just don't. It's not that they can't work. It's usually that the writers just aren't clever enough to make them work. It just becomes like, you know, kind of just like Wank after a while. It's like, all right, bro, I got it. Like they overpowered. You know, Rimuru, he can do it all, bro. He eventually gonna become the god above everybody. All right, let's wrap the show up. But like it works in comedy settings because it's like kind of like One Punch Man, where it's just like, all right, man, I'm fed up with all this. And just the idea of like somebody being like, hey man, I just want to get off work. Like I don't have time for this. Like I've been at work all day. I want to go home. I want to go to sleep. I want to eat like a nice meal and go to sleep. Let's wrap this up. And it's like, no, come do some overtime. Like, I'm about to punch something in the face so I don't have to do overtime. The concept of that made me laugh, but I didn't have it in me to watch another fantasy series, but hearing you talk so well about it does make you want to check it out.
Yeah, and like I said, it's one of those where I don't know if it's going to go the distance or not, but so far, it reminds me, not in concept, but it reminds me of what was the show that you and I watched? What was it? The Boonies hero?
Yeah. Okay. So me, are we on the same page?
Yeah.
Last Dungeon Boonies. Yeah.
It kind of has that vibe where it's this character who, in his world, well, that anime is different because in his world he's weak, but when he gets to this other world, he's like the most powerful person there. But it kind of has similar comedic vibes, in my opinion. The vibes are similar in that regard. And that anime, I kind of wish it had a second season too, but it's one of those that I enjoyed it for what it was. You know, not every anime, unfortunately, is going to get another season or going to be long running. You kind of have to enjoy it while you have it. This may be that, but I don't know. So,
I'll say this. I got distracted because someone wrote something really stupid in a separate Discord, but I'll tell y'all about that in a second when we get off the stream. But like, I'll say this: some of those don't need a second season because like it becomes, unless the writing's really good, it becomes what I was talking about, where it's like, all right, after season 1, you kind of ran dry on whatever made this like really interesting and entertaining, and like you trying to expand on it, but it was nothing past the initial gimmick. So like, I don't know that. So like Last Dungeon Boonies, I'm like, I kind of just want maybe one more season to just kind of wrap up the story, but I wouldn't want like season 4 of Last Dungeon. I'm like, man, just don't need all that.
Yeah.
And this probably, I don't know if this is the same. I'd have to watch to see, but like usually like a gag type thing like this, you probably don't need like more than 25, 26 episodes to just go ahead and get everything, wrap up all the plot lines, and you got like a nice little laugh out of it. So, but yeah, I think that is going to wrap this week up. I mean, we covered a lot of different anime. We just had a blast. So I'm excited to actually check out at least a couple of these. And so hopefully y'all heard something in one of the ones that we talked about that will make you want to check one out. But that's it for this week's episode. You know what to do. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button if you hadn't. And do me a personal favor. Have an excellent week. Peace.